When was the last time proportional representation elected people to the Westminster Parliament? Go on, take a guess. The Middle Ages, MPs for the university seats between the wars? No, it was June. But of course, it wasn't the likes of you or I that got to elect people to Parliament using a fair democratic voting system. Sorry, everyone, you only get fair votes if you inherited a peerage. The rest of us regular folk are stuck with an unfair winner-takes-all system that keeps giving governments massive unearned majorities. So what's the story? Well, the majority of British lawmakers are in the House of Lords, not the Commons. Who are they? Well, there are retired politicians, former speakers, except John Bercow, but let's not go there. 26 Church of England bishops, because look, if Iran can have religious leaders in the legislature, why can't we? A bunch of people whose great-grandfathers knew Lloyd George and possibly gave him money, and a bunch of other people whose great-great-great-something grandfathers were mates with William the Conqueror. But not all the hereditary peers get to sit in the Lords anymore. Since the House of Lords Act 1999, only 92 of the several hundred hereditary peers are allowed to sit in the Lords, with those 92 being elected not by the people, but by the hereditary peers. But of course, an election where you inherit the right to vote isn't stupid enough. So the 99 Act also includes a huge fudge, creating separate electorates along party lines, freezing party shares according to the preferences of 20th century hereditary peers. So 42 peers are elected by the Conservative hereditary peers, 28 peers by the independent crossbenchers, 3 peers are elected by the Lib Dem hereditary peers, and 2 by Labour hereditary peers. So we have an election where you inherit the right to vote and we already know which party will win. When a peer dies or retires, there's a by-election. And in June, the year of our Lord 2021, we got 43 Conservative voters choosing 3 Conservative peers out of 20 candidates. So I am profoundly ashamed to present the simultaneously most and least fair election in Westminster. It uses preference voting. Americans very sensibly call this instant runoff because after each round you eliminate no-hope candidates and then do a runoff count with the same ballot papers. The voters number candidates in their order of preference so the returning officers know where their votes go each round. Half the candidates got only one first preference vote. Presumably they were voting for themselves. But because this is a nice, sensible system, you can vote for whoever you like without throwing your vote away. And if you voted for yourself, your lordship, then your vote then goes to your top preference out of the candidates that are still in the race. These 10. With 3 seats, it takes over 25% of the vote to become unbeatable, and Lord Sandhurst already has 27%. Lord Sandhurst so called because his great-great-grandfather used to run the British, Indian and Irish armies. Sandhurst is a judge who stood up for judicial independence when the tabloid press was calling judges enemies of the people, which is better than the minister whose job it was at the time. So that's the pro-rule of law Tory faction. Sandhurst has more votes than needed, and because preference voting is so very fair, the unused votes aren't wasted. As Lords Carnarvon and Ashcombe are knocked out, their votes all go to the Brexit fanatic, the Earl of Leicester, making sure that that strand of Conservative thinking is represented too. The leading candidates left are Lords Harlech and Altrincham, who are both old-school High Tories. Baron Harlech's here because his great-great-great-grandfather and his brother were Tory politicians in the 19th century. The Baron Altringham's another old Tory. He's in the Bullingdon Club picture, to the left of David Cameron in the picture. That's not a comment on his politics. Unusually, he's actually tried to be democratically elected as an MP, but he failed miserably. Perhaps he'll have more luck now he personally knows all 43 voters. De la Val's voters prefer Harlech, but the Marquis of Abergavenny's voters prefer Altrincham, and that clinches it. So the full diversity of Conservative hereditary peers is represented. How lovely and democratic for them. Meanwhile, the rest of us are stuck with a winner-takes-all system, and the UK government is even taking away the few preference vote elections we've got. But things are changing. At the 2021 Labour conference, local branches voted 80% for electoral reform, And even some London Assembly Conservatives are opposed to the government's regressive plans. So please join campaigners like the Electoral Reform Society, Make Votes Matter and others listed in comments, get informed and let's demand votes that actually count.